There's something deeply unsettling about waking up every day, putting on a version of yourself that the world expects, but that you don't recognize. We live in a world that constantly whispers in our ears, or sometimes shouts, who we should be louder, be quieter, be more successful, be more like them. And somewhere along the way, we trade authenticity for approval. We become masters of performance, not purpose. But here's the truth, the world doesn't know who you are. It only knows what it wants from you. Think about that for a sec. The world wants you to be productive, but that doesn't mean fulfilled. It wants you to conform, but that doesn't mean inspired. It rewards consistency, even if that consistency kills your creativity. And so we follow scripts that were written by someone else. We chase jobs, relationships, lifestyles, not because they resonate with who we truly are, but because they've been marketed to us as success. But no matter how far you climb, if the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall, you're still in the wrong place. So let me ask you, who are you really? Not the version your parents hoped you'd become. Not the filtered version you show on social media. Not the polished version your boss wants to see. Who are you when no one's watching? That's the only voice that deserves your loyalty. Not the world's expectations, not the trends, not the noise, because all of that will change tomorrow. But your truth, that's permanent. That's powerful. The world doesn't need more copies. It needs more. And the moment you start living by your own compass, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing validation. You stop comparing. You stop shrinking to fit in rooms that were never built for you in the first place. And instead, you lead. Not with arrogance, but with clarity. Not with noise, but with conviction. Not by controlling others, but by being so grounded in your own purpose that others feel safe enough to find theirs. So if you're feeling stuck, ask yourself this: what part of your life feels like a performance? And what would happen if you stopped performing and started living? That is where confidence is born, not in being everything the world wants you to be, but in being unshakably you, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's unpopular. Because only when you stop letting the world tell you who to be, can you finally become who you were meant to be. We grow up in a world that seems to have all the answers. From the moment we are born, there are rules, labels, and expectations waiting for us. We're told what success looks like, what happiness should feel like, what path we should follow. We're handed blueprints: go to school, get good grades, pick a career, find a partner, earn more, and retire. The world calls it a normal life. But what if that definition of normal has nothing to do with who we are? The truth is, the world isn't really interested in you. It's interested in what it can get from you. It wants you to fit into systems, perform roles, and meet expectations that were never designed with your uniqueness in mind. It doesn't matter what you love, what you believe in, or what kind of life would truly make you come alive. The world rewards those who comply, not those who challenge the script. It's easy to believe that external success is the ultimate goal. Good job title, you're doing great. New car, you must be happy. Thousands of followers, you've made it. But here's the problem. All these things can exist in your life and you can still feel empty. You can follow the world's script perfectly and still feel lost inside. Because the expectations you've been chasing weren't born from your truth. They were handed to you by people who never even knew you. We begin to shape our identities based on what earns approval. We adjust our behavior to fit in. We pursue degrees we're not passionate about, take jobs that drain us, and stay in relationships that don't reflect our values. All because somewhere deep inside, we've been taught to fear rejection more than we fear regret. That fear keeps us stuck. We silence ourselves to be liked. We suppress our creativity to avoid judgment. We pretend to be someone we're not to feel accepted by people who don't even see the real us. Over time, the distance between who we are and who we pretend to be becomes unbearable. And that's where burnout, anxiety, and self-doubt come from. Not always from doing too much, but from doing too little of what truly matters. If you look closely, you'll see that much of what the world defines as success has very little to do with meaning. You can rise in status but fall in self-respect. You can gain influence and still lose your identity. You can be surrounded by people and still feel unseen. So what's the alternative? It starts with asking a better question. Not what does the world want from me, but what is true for me. This is not a selfish question. It's a necessary one. Because when you live your truth, you give others permission to do the same. You stop contributing to a culture of imitation and start creating a culture of authenticity. The world doesn't need more people who blindly follow. It needs people who are awake, honest and real. It needs people brave enough to say, that path isn't for me, even if it's popular. People who are bold enough to pursue what feels right, even when it's misunderstood. You don't owe the world your compliance, you owe it your truth. Because when you live aligned with who you really are, not who you were told to be, you become someone no system can define, no trend can control, and no approval can validate or take away. And that kind of person changes everything. Not by fitting, but by standing up. Not by following, but by being real. Not by accepting the world's expectations, but by rewriting them. You weren't born to live someone else's story, you were born to live your own truth. Most of us spend our lives trying to be liked. We want to be accepted, validated, and approved of. We shape our behavior, our words, even our dreams around what we think will earn us praise. We hide parts of ourselves that feel too different, too raw, too real, because we fear they'll be rejected. And little by little we trade authenticity for approval, thinking we're doing the right thing. But approval is a moving target. No matter how much you change, someone will always want you to be something else. You can't win that game, and even if you do, you lose yourself. Authenticity, on the other hand, is not about being liked. It's about being known. It's about showing up as who you really are, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's not perfect, and even when not everyone agrees. Authenticity is rooted in truth. And truth doesn't need to perform. It doesn't need applause. It just needs to be lived. The problem is, we live in a world that rewards appearance more than substance. You get more likes when you post the highlight reel, not the honest struggle. You get more attention when you follow trends, not when you question them. And because of that, many people choose to become what's expected rather than who they truly are. They succeed on the outside but feel lost on the inside. Because deep down, they know the version of themselves getting all the approval isn't real. Living for approval creates a false identity. It's an exhausting way to live, constantly adjusting yourself based on other people's opinions, constantly wondering if you're good enough, constantly afraid of being found out. And worst of all, you begin to forget who you were before the world told you who to be. You lose touch with your values, your passions, your voice. But here's the thing, no amount of applause can make up for the emptiness that comes from betraying yourself. And no amount of criticism can break someone who's deeply connected to who they truly are. That's the power of authenticity. When you live authentically, you don't need everyone to like you, you just need to like who you are when you're alone. This doesn't mean you'll never feel insecure, it doesn't mean everyone will embrace you, some people will misunderstand you, some will walk away, but those they'll love you for you, not for the mask you wear. And that kind of connection is rare. That kind of connection is real. It's better to be disliked for being real than loved for being fake. Authenticity isn't about being loud or dramatic. It's about being alive. It's about living in a way where your values match your actions, where your outside matches your inside. That alignment creates peace, clarity, and confidence that doesn't depend on circumstances. When you live this way, you become rooted, you become steady, you become whole. And here's the paradox. The more authentic you are, the more you attract the kind of people and opportunities that are truly meant for you. You stop wasting energy on trying to fit in and start building a life that fits you, a life built on truth, a life that lasts. Approval is borrowed, authenticity is owned. Approval fades, authenticity grows. Approval is conditional, authenticity is freedom. So the next time you're tempted to play a role just to please someone, pause and ask yourself, am I being true or am I just trying to be liked? Because at the end of the day, the opinions of others come and go, but the relationship you have with yourself is lifelong. Choose authenticity, not because it's easy, but because it's real. Not because everyone will applaud it, but because you can live with it. And when you do that, you stop performing and you start living. There's a quiet exhaustion that comes from constantly putting on a show. Many people wake up each day and slip into a role they've practiced for years, not because it's who they are, but because it's what's expected. They smile when they don't feel like smiling. They agree when they want to disagree. They pretend to be strong when they're falling apart inside. And over time, this constant performance becomes a way of life. We live in a world that has taught us to value image over integrity. We're told to brand ourselves, to present a polished version of who we are, especially on social media, in interviews, even in relationships. We learn to say the right things, look the part, and suppress anything that doesn't fit the narrative. But beneath the surface, many of us are tired, not tired from working too much, tired from pretending too much. You are not a performance, You are not a character in someone else's story. You are not a job title, a follower count, or a filtered photo. You are a human being with real emotions, real dreams, and real flaws. And the more you try to live as a performance, the more disconnected you become from others and from yourself. When your worth is tied to how well you perform, failure becomes terrifying. Vulnerability becomes dangerous. Honesty feels like a risk. So instead of living fully, you live cautiously, measuring every word, calculating every move. Always asking, will this make them like me? Or what will they think? And slowly, your life starts to revolve around other people's expectations rather than your own truth. The danger in living this way is that the longer you perform, the harder it becomes to take the mask off. You start to believe the act. You start to confuse who you are with who you've been pretending to be. And when that happens, you lose access to your own voice. Your decisions no longer come from purpose. They come from pressure. But the truth is, you were never meant to perform. You were meant to live, fully, freely. Honestly, the people who truly matter don't need you to impress them. They need you to be real with them. They need your honesty more than your perfection. They need your presence more than your image. It's okay to not have it all together. It's okay to say I'm struggling. It's okay to not know all the answers. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And the more you embrace your humanity, the more space you create for others to do the same. Authenticity is contagious. When one person takes off the mask, it gives others the courage to do the same. You don't need to be the best. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be real. And being real means showing up as yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. It means saying what you truly think, even if it doesn't get applause. It means choosing honesty over performance, even if it costs you approval. The irony is when you stop trying to perform, you begin to connect on a much deeper level. You attract the kind of people who love you for who you actually are. You build trust. You experience genuine relationships. And most importantly, you feel at peace, because you're no longer at war with yourself. So if you're tired, maybe it's not because life is too hard. Maybe it's because you've been carrying the weight of a role that was never yours to play. Maybe it's time to let go of the act and step into the truth. You are not a performance. You never were. And the moment you stop pretending is the moment you start to live. There is a version of you that no one sees. The one behind the noise, beyond the expectations, beneath the roles you play. It's the version of you that doesn't seek applause, doesn't perform for approval, and doesn't need to impress anyone. That version of you only comes alive when no one's watching. And it's in those quiet, unfiltered moments that you discover who you really are. We live in a world that constantly demands a show. Everywhere you go, there's an audience. You're judged by how well you present yourself, how quickly you respond, how much you achieve. People make assumptions based on your appearance, your tone, your choices. And so, without realizing it, many of us begin to build a life around what others expect, not around what we truly believe or want. But the truth is, you cannot find yourself while constantly being watched. You cannot understand your own soul if you're always adjusting it for others. Discovery doesn't happen in performance. It happens in solitude. It happens in silence. It happens in the moments when you have nothing to prove and no one to impress. When you strip away the noise, the notifications, the pressure, the opinions, what's left? When there's no one to judge your words, would you still say the same things? If there were no followers, no feedback, no praise, would you still choose the same path? These are the questions that lead you to yourself. Most people never take the time to ask them. They live reactive lives, responding to what the world throws at them, shaping themselves like clay to fit into every space. But if you never sit with yourself, you never meet yourself. And if you never meet yourself, how can you live a life that feels like yours? When no one is watching, you get to tell the truth. You get to admit what you're afraid of. You get to acknowledge what actually matters to you. You get to question the goals you've been chasing and the people you've been trying to please. And that kind of honesty is where transformation begins. Because once you know who you are, when no one is watching, you can start showing up as that person, even when people are watching. You become grounded. You become clear. You make decisions, not based on fear, but based on alignment. You stop reacting and start choosing. You stop performing and start leading. And make no mistake, discovering yourself in private takes courage. It takes courage to face your insecurities. It takes courage to sit in silence long enough to hear your own voice. It takes courage to stop numbing with distractions and start listening to the parts of you that have been buried under years of pretending. But when you do that, everything changes. Your relationships deepen because they're built on truth. Your goals become more meaningful because they come from the heart, not from ego. You no longer need to be the loudest person in the room because your presence speaks for itself. You don't need constant validation because you've learned how to validate yourself. And the world may not understand you right away. That's okay. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be true. And the more true you are to yourself, the more you'll attract the right people, the right opportunities, and the right path. The moments when no one is watching are the most important moments of your life. That's where your foundation is built. That's where your character is formed. That's where your purpose is revealed. So give yourself permission to disconnect from the show. Step away from the spotlight. Turn down the volume of the world and turn up the volume of your soul. Because only when you discover who you are in silence can you live fully confidently and unapologetically in the noise. Leadership is not about having the loudest voice in the room or the highest title on a business card. It's not about controlling others, commanding attention, or being the smartest person at the table. True leadership starts from within. It begins when you are rooted in something deeper than ambition. When your actions are aligned with your why. You lead best when you're grounded in purpose. Purpose gives your leadership weight. It gives you direction when things are unclear, and resilience when things get hard. Without it, leadership becomes a performance, a game of appearances and politics. But when you lead with purpose, you don't need to pretend, you don't need to impress, you just need to serve. People don't follow you because you have all the answers. They follow you because you stand for something. They follow clarity, they follow conviction, they follow people who know why they're doing what they're doing, because that kind of clarity is rare, and it's magnetic. A leader grounded in purpose isn't easily shaken. They can face setbacks, criticism, even failure, and still move forward, not because everything is going perfectly, but because they know what they're working toward matters. That internal compass becomes stronger than any external pressure. On the other hand, when you lead without purpose, it's easy to lose your way. You chase recognition instead of impact. You say yes to things that dilute your mission. You let fear of judgment make your decision. And eventually, you burn out, not from working too hard, but from working on the wrong things. Purpose keeps you aligned. It reminds you what's worth fighting for. It helps you filter out distractions and focus on what actually moves the needle. You stop comparing yourself to others because your race is different, your vision is different, your reason is different. And here's the beautiful part. When you lead from that place, people feel it. They trust you more, not because you're perfect, but because you're consistent. They're not inspired by how much you know, but by how much you care. When your purpose shines through your leadership, you give others permission to lead with purpose too. It creates a ripple effect. That's the difference between a leader who builds followers and a leader who builds leaders. When you lead from ego, people depend on you. When you lead from purpose, people grow because of you. Purpose-based leadership is also more sustainable. It fuels you from within. You're not driven solely by deadlines, bonuses, or praise. You're driven by something meaningful. That kind of motivation doesn't fade. It doesn't need to be refilled constantly. It flows from your identity. But purpose isn't found in noise. It's discovered in silence. You have to slow down and listen to what actually matters to you. What do you believe in? What breaks your heart? What change do you want to make? When you know those answers, leadership becomes less about having authority and more about living with intention. And remember, you don't have to wait for a promotion to start leading. You don't have to wait until everything's perfect. You can lead right where you are, in your family, in your community, in your team, by being a person who shows up with clarity, integrity, and heart. The world doesn't need more leaders who are impressive. It needs more leaders who are real, leaders who stand for something, leaders who are grounded, not in their ego, but in their why. So if you want to lead well, don't start with strategies, start with purpose, because when you're clear on why you lead, you'll never lose sight of how to lead. There comes a point in life when growth demands space. It demands that you leave behind versions of yourself that no longer serve you. Beliefs, roles, environments, and even people. But many of us, out of habit or fear, try to shrink ourselves to stay where we once felt safe. We minimize our voice, mute our ambition, and lower our standards just to remain acceptable to others or to hold on to what's familiar. And in doing so, we betray the very part of us that's trying to evolve. Growth is uncomfortable. It often asks us to walk away from the places we once called home. Not because those places were wrong, but because we've changed. What once felt right might now feel heavy. What once aligned might now feel limiting. But instead of listening to that inner shift, we resist. We tell ourselves, be grateful. Don't make a fuss, fit in. And we keep trying to force ourselves into boxes we've clearly outgrown. You are not meant to live small. You are not meant to remain unchanged. The discomfort you feel isn't a sign of failure, it's a signal. It's the internal alarm that says, you've grown too big for this. Whether it's a job that no longer challenges you, a relationship that no longer nurtures you, or a routine that no longer excites you, the signs are clear, you're evolving, and the space around you hasn't caught up. But instead of honoring that truth, we shrink. We convince ourselves it's easier to stay, easier to be quiet, easier to blend in than to step out. And we wonder why we feel stuck, uninspired, or disconnected. Every time you shrink yourself to stay in a place you've outgrown, you lose a part of your voice, a part of your fire, a part of your purpose. The longer you stay in the wrong place, the more distant you become from who you really are. And here's the truth, you're not difficult because you've changed. You're not selfish because you want more. You're not disloyal because you no longer fit. You're simply growing. And sometimes growth means outgrowing. It takes courage to admit that. It takes even more courage to act on it, to walk away from stability, to risk judgment, to face the unknown. But the alternative is living a life that's too small for your soul, and that's far more painful. The spaces that once held you with love may not be able to stretch wide enough to hold who you're becoming. And that's okay. You don't have to hate where you came from to know it's time to leave. Gratitude and growth can coexist. You can honor your past while still stepping into your future. When you stop shrinking, you start expanding, in vision, in confidence, in clarity. You begin to make decisions based on your values, not your fears. You stop editing yourself for comfort and start expressing yourself with truth. And the people who truly support you will celebrate that growth, not resent it. You were not made to play small. You were not made to fit into boxes or dim your light so others feel comfortable. You were made to grow, stretch, rise, and become. And sometimes that means walking away from the very places that helped shape you. That's not a betrayal, that's evolution. So trust the nudge, trust the tension. If something feels too tight, it's not because you're wrong, it's because you've outgrown it. Stop asking for permission to grow. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to move. The time is now. The space is out there. And the world is waiting for the fullest version of you, not the smaller version you think it can handle. Stop shrinking. You were never meant to be small.